Right bracket Chapter 4. A Comprehensive Study of the KOYLE Relief Mine. By James R. Christensen. Another interesting account of the history of the relief mine was written by James R. Christensen for a BYU history class in May of 1957. His information was obtained from friends and relatives of Bishop KOYLE, as well as from many other sources. To save space, appendices are not included. A Comprehensive Study of the KOYLE Relief Mine. By James R. Christensen. Preface. The object of this paper is to present in a clear, unbiased manner the story of the KOYLE Relief Mine, or as it is more commonly called, the Dream Mine, and some of the people and facts associated with it. Research has been of an impersonal nature. No attempt is made on the part of the researcher to project his feelings or attitudes for or against the mine, or incidents and personalities connected with its history. One must, however, realize that pure objectivity in a project of this nature is hard to come by. In dealing with personalities, as will be very much the case in this paper, it is only realistic to acknowledge that feelings, not of an objective right bracket nature, will be wholly involved. This, however, should not distract from the aim of this paper, which, as before stated, is to present as complete and unbiased a history as is possible in the time for, and the required length of this paper. Cooperation on the part of friends and relatives of Bishop John H. KOYLE, Dream Mine founder and president, is greatly appreciated. Introduction. The belief that every worthy member has a right to personal revelation in any of its varied forms is a distinguishing feature of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. In fact, the very foundation of this church may be said to consist wholly of divine communication with God through various forms of revelation. It is, therefore, not surprising that, with such a background, countless numbers of individual members make sincere and possible rightful claim to divine communication with an immortal or unearthly source. This fact has in most cases been to the advantage of the Church both individually and collectively. It has made for a tightly knit, obedient and productive organization, which has witnessed an enormous growth both physically and spiritually, since its founding in 1830. It has often been the case, however, that such revelations have caused disruptions in the Church, and have been received contrary to an established order, this order being that the individual member may receive revelation for his own welfare or that of his family. But the right of revelation for the welfare of the Church as a whole is the right of the President of the right bracket Church only. 1. Revelations received contrary to this would, according to Latter-day Saint belief, be out of harmony with the will of God. 2. Many of the asserted revelations have been concerned with the financial welfare of the Church. The usual basis of this second type is the finding of vast amounts of wealth through divine guidance by some individual or group of individuals, the purpose of the discovery being the financial independence of the Church, the redeeming and establishing of Zion in Jackson County, the bringing of aid and comfort to all worthy saints during the disastrous times to come, and the establishing of a gold standard at a time when the national and world standards are destroyed. Following are a number of examples which illustrate the above. In the mountainous area near Brime City, Utah, is a mine, the Majestic, owned by Frederick J. Holton. 3. As Apostle James E. Talmage, 4, reported, this mine is said to be similar to the Dream Mine, which will be discussed later. Mr. Holton, who is now 94 years old, states that he was directed by heavenly messengers to begin mining for gold at a specified place. The object of the mine was the use of its contained wealth for the purpose of making the church in the Brime City area self-sustaining. A form of the United Order was to be initiated, and the city itself was to grow to be larger than Los Angeles, California. Holton makes claim to a personal 1. Doc. and Cov. Sec. 132:7. 2. I bid. Sec. 28:12-13. 3. The mine is at present being worked by the son of Holton. Holton himself is in a rest home for the aged. 4. Minutes of weekly MTG. Of the General Authorities of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Journal History, August 7, 1913, page 4. Right bracket Visitation of the Savior who ordained Holton to receive a position of highest authority in the Church. 1. As before stated, Holton is now 94 years old and is blind. He is, however, surprisingly able physically and enjoys comparatively good health. 2. A second and much better known example is the Humbug Mines of Jesse Knight. 3. The Humbug is one of few and perhaps the only mining venture of this type that has as yet fulfilled its revealed destiny. During the late 1800s, Jesse had been prospecting along on the east side of Godiva Mountain in the Tintic, Utah area. He sat down under a pine tree to rest when, to his great surprise, he heard a voice say, "This country is for the Mormons." He felt that this message referred to mining in that area. Any benefits realized should be used to further the cause of Mormonism. 4. In 1894, while they were working the humbug claim, Jesse told his son, "We are going to have all the money we want as soon as we are in a position to handle it properly. We will someday save the credit of the church." 5. 1. Interview with Norman Pierce, prominent stockholder in KOYLE Mining Company, April 30, 1957. 2. I bid. 3. A friend named Roundy, who in refusing to become associated with Knight's claim, referred to it as a damned old humbug. This name stuck. 4. J. William Knight, The Jesse Knight Family, Salt Lake City. Deseret News Press, 1941, pages 83 to 86. 5. The humbug was a success. Jesse continued to invest his money and eventually became a multimillionaire. The mine required some 12 years of continual labor before it finally paid off in the latter part of 1896. Right bracket letters brought to light in 1930 show that Jesse in 1896 responded to a plea by President Woodruff, who was calling on wealthy members to come to the aid of the church, which at the time was in great financial need. He presented to the church a check of $10,000. This was a literal fulfillment of the above prophecy. In later years, sums amounting to several hundred thousands of dollars were given the church by Knight from this mine. 1. A third example is that of Ben Bullock, who in the year 1915 claimed to have received a heavenly visitation while plowing on his farm near Provo, Utah. Coming to the end of a furrow, Bullock relates that he suddenly became very weak, but he did not lose his senses. At this moment, many things concerned with his future were revealed to him. He saw that he would suffer as far as his standing in the church was concerned, but he was not to become bitter. 2. He was to become the steward of great amounts of wealth, but only after losing all but his few mining interests. This wealth should be for the building up of the kingdom of God and the gathering of the saints to Zion. It would also be used to feed and house the saints during times of famine. He saw a large beautiful mountain which had not existed before, but which represented the great wealth he would eventually receive. He was told that if he was faithful, all of the above and many other things would come to pass. 3. In 1921, on the night following his death, Jesse Knight appeared to Bullock and stated that Jesse's mission had been 1. Knight, pages 84 to 86. 2. Bullock was in great financial need and was contemplating giving up his position as bishop. He received the impression, however, that he should remain. Nevertheless, he was released a short time later. This was at the time when to be bishop was to remain bishop for life. 3. Ben Bullock, personal history, unpublished history written during the 1930s. Right bracket to reveal the treasures of the earth and distribute them for the edification of the church and its members. His mantle was now to rest upon Bullock, whose mission would be even greater than that of Jesse's. He should go through much trial and tribulation, even more than Jesse had gone through. 1. Bullock has now spent 42 years at his task. He has mining and oil claims in several of the western states. His main mine is the Bullock Tunnel, located in a canyon near Payson, Utah. This mine was located and work has progressed through the use of a divining rod. According to Bullock, he should strike the mother lode soon, perhaps even at the time of this writing. 2. On the night of February 13, 1957, Bullock states that John H. KOYLE appeared to him. After renewing their friendship, KOYLE expressed dissatisfaction with the way his mine was being run, and said that Bullock was digging in the right place, and would soon strike a very rich ore. He also stated that the chain of mountains to the southwest of Payson, Utah, was filled with great quantities of ore. 3. 1. I bid. 2. Pierce, interview, May 10, 1957. 3. Certified statement made by Ben Bullock in the presence of witnesses on February 14, 1957. Note: this appearance seems to agree with what is called the green spot dream of John H. KOYLE. In this dream, KOYLE claims to have seen himself with Bullock and a group of friends going up Water Canyon located near his mine. The group proceeded to go around the mountain side with horses, while he and Bullock continued up the canyon on foot. They were forced to take cover from enemies who began firing at them from atop the ridge. As they approached the top, they came to a clearing which they must cross, in order to reach a green spot on the other side, which would furnish safety to them. KOYLE warned Bullock of the danger, but he nevertheless broke from cover, and reached safety just ahead of KOYLE. Here they were welcomed by their friends who had gone around. A suggested meaning to this dream is that after much trial and peril, both would reach the desired goal of success. Bullock or Bullock's tunnel would produce first, followed shortly thereafter by KOYLE's dream mine. With this as an introduction, we will now consider the history of the KOYLE relief mine, which, according to an eminent sociologist, John H. Nelson, has caused the greatest social movement ever to exist within the body of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 1. History of John H. KOYLE, founder and former president of the KOYLE relief mine. John H. KOYLE was born August 14, 1864, in Spanish Fork, Utah. At the age of 8 he went with his family to settle in Mopa Valley on the banks of the Muddy River, about 400 miles southwest of Spanish Fork. This was an answer to a call by the president of the Latter-day Saint Church, Brigham Young. 2. At the age of 9, KOYLE helplessly watched as his father was crushed beneath a rock slide. They were working on a mountainside in Spanish Fork Canyon when the accident occurred. 3. Throughout his youth, KOYLE was noted for his sensitive and deeply religious nature. He often made a point of reminding the other members of his family of their duty to God and the Church. 4. 1. Norman Pierce, Relief Through a Dream Mine, page 26, Personal Collection of Revelations of John H. KOYLE, written in narrative form, 1930–1957. 2. Interview with Merrill KOYLE, son of John H. KOYLE, April 14, 1957. 3. Ibid. 4. Interview with Mrs. Ellen Rose Fillmore, sister of John H. KOYLE, May 5, 1957. In 1884, at the age of 20, KOYLE married Miss Emily Holt. He purchased a farm just south of Spanish Fork, and for a number of years did quite well. One night in 1886, KOYLE had a dream in which he learned where a lost cow could be found. The next morning, he told his wife of the dream, and stated that he would go see if the information given him was correct. Upon arriving at the place indicated, he saw the cow standing just as he had seen her in his dream. 1. This was the beginning of a long series of dreams, visitations, and inspired happenings. KOYLE reported that one day in 1890, while plowing in his fields, a voice spoke to him and asked him if he would go on a mission. Looking around but seeing nobody, he scratched his head in wonderment and continued his plowing. The same voice, in a somewhat more commanding tone, said again, "John, will you go on a mission?" He immediately answered, "Yes." He went directly home and told his family he had been called on a mission and had to do something about it, although he had no finances at the time. Shortly thereafter, his bishop called by and asked him if he could go on a mission for the church. He said he could. He rented his farm to support his wife and 3 children during his absence, and sold a cow to provide funds for his journey to the mission field. 2. During his mission, KOYLE earned the profound respect of his fellow missionaries and his mission president, J. Golden Kimball, who became a lifelong friend. 3. 1. KOYLE, interview, April 28, 1957. 2. KOYLE, interview, May, 1957. 3. Ibid. Just prior to his entering the mission field, 2 Mormon elders had been killed by enemies of the church. The people were especially bitter about polygamy. On one occasion, KOYLE and his companion were accosted by 4 men who placed them against a wall and were apparently going to shoot them. The leader of the group, an extremely large red-whiskered man, did nearly all the talking and said to them, "Now tell us what you are doing with all our young girls that you are taking to Utah and turning into polygamists." KOYLE began talking, and after an hour, the 4 men laid their guns aside and began arguing among themselves. The red-whiskered man was determined to go on with the killing, but about 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, he started asking questions. Before morning, they were almost converted. They let KOYLE and his companion go, and on another occasion he wrote to his wife telling her of a dream wherein he was shown railroad men surveying a right-of-way through the middle of his farm. He asked his wife to confirm this. Just 2 days previous to receiving his letter, she had written him concerning this very problem. The letters had passed each other en route. He made this information a matter of prayer, requesting that his farm might remain intact. The impression came that he should not worry, for the route would be changed and his farm would not be harmed. Apparently this is what happened. 2. After he came home from his mission, his farm was not very prosperous, so he peddled butter and cheese from Merca to Tintic for about 8 years. During this time, he received his 1. KOYLE interview, May 5, 1957. 2. Pierce, page 3. Right bracket revelation concerning his mine. In 1908 he was sustained as bishop of the Leland Ward, Nebo State of the LDS Church, and was released in 1913. In 1918 he went to Idaho where he ranched until 1925. During this time he spent 4 years as a bishop's counselor. An experience demonstrative of KOYLE's great faith occurred during his stay in Idaho. One day while tending his crops which were about ready for harvest, KOYLE, accompanied by one of his boys, observed an electric storm of great proportion coming rapidly up the valley in their direction. Realizing that such a storm would mean total destruction of his harvest, KOYLE knelt with his boy on the ditch bank and in mighty prayer, rebuked the storm, and commanded that it change its course. To the utter amazement of the boy and the sincere expectation of KOYLE, the storm changed its course and proceeded around the mountain on the side, leaving the ripened crops totally unharmed. 1. In 1926 he spent a year in Nevada as foreman of a mine. He then returned to his mine in Spanish Fork, and spent the remainder of his years managing and working it. According to his son and others, KOYLE, during his lifetime, made many predictions which were fulfilled and many that await fulfillment. 2. In 1909 he foresaw the coming of World War I, and that the 145th Field Artillery would be inducted, but would at no time see combat. When news came in late 1918 that the 145th was being moved up, KOYLE received much criticism. Nevertheless, he stuck by his prediction. It is now a matter of record. 1. KOYLE interview, May 5, 1957. 2. Note prophecies of KOYLE in Appendix I. Right bracket that the war ended on November the 11th, and the 145th, although on the front lines, saw no action. 1. KOYLE foresaw the Republican victory of 1928, but stated that the man riding the donkey would win in 1932 and continue to win, establishing an unprecedented record of successive victories at the polls. During this time the elephant would become sick and unable to regain its feet. One attempt after another would be made until eventually, after many years, the elephant would rise to its feet and remain on them for a number of years, but would then go down and the country with it. There would then follow an unprecedented period of war, confusion, turmoil, and national disaster. 2. In August 1942, while visiting a dentist to have his teeth repaired, KOYLE stated that in 3 years from then, World War II would end. He told his family to make note of this, which they did. 3. It is now historical fact that on August 10, 1945, Japan surrendered and hostilities ceased. On Thursday, April 17, 1948, KOYLE was excommunicated from the Latter-day Saint Church on charges of insubordination to the rules and authority of the Church. 4. He was rather ill at the time, and became much worse thereafter. This illness continued until May of 1949 when he was taken to the Payson City Hospital. On May 17, at the age of 84, KOYLE died and was buried in the Spanish Fork Cemetery. 5. 1. KOYLE interview, May 5, 1957. 2. Pierce interview, May 7, 1957. 3. KOYLE interview, May 5, 1957. 4. The Deseret News, April 16, 1948, page 6. 5. The Deseret News, May 19, 1949, page 7. Right bracket since he never kept a diary or personal record of any kind, many of the visions and spiritual experiences of KOYLE can no longer be accounted for. However, the one experience upon which all sources agree is the vision received in 1894 wherein the mine was revealed to him. On this subject, the following statement was made by Carter E. Grant in a letter to James E. Talmage on September 30, 1931. I heard this story repeated by Brother KOYLE in 1911, 1912, 1913, 1914, and 1915, and many times since. One peculiar thing about Brother KOYLE, he never crosses himself, repeating his dream with the same exactness as he did in the beginning. One would think he would change it or add to it, but he never has. History of the mine. One night during the month of August 1894, a personage from another world appeared to KOYLE in a dream, and conducted him in the spirit to a mountain located to the east of his home. He was taken to a certain spot on the side of the mountain where the earth parted before them, and they entered without any apparent resistance. 1. As they proceeded through the mine, the messenger talked freely and explained the various formations and the runs. As the excavation proceeded down through the mountain. 2. They followed a cream-colored leader which he was told would mark the line he should follow in the mine he was to open. At about a 1,400-foot level he was shown a tunnel he was to dig which would contact the original shaft. Continuing from this level for 90 to 100 feet, they came to a capstone. 1. Letter from Bishop John F. Warner, nephew of John H. Coyle, to James R. Christensen, April 20, 1957. 2. Statement by Carter E. Grant to James E. Talmage, September 9, 1931, page 1. Right bracket. This capstone was flat and about 3 feet in thickness and exceedingly hard. It was made known to him that when the actual mining operation reached this point, it would take almost a month to penetrate the stone. 1. Beneath the capstone was a large body of rich white quartz containing leaf gold. On this subject, Coyle one time stated, "When I was taken through the mine for the first time in 1894, after being shown the rich body of ore beneath the capstone, I was told that the ancient inhabitants of this land had at one time discovered these riches, having penetrated into the southwest portion of the great body of gold ore. Then the values had been closed to them and would be closed to us, too, if we also became lifted up in pride and hard-hearted, using this wealth for self-gratification only." 2. Continuing through this rich gold quartz for about 175 feet, Coyle and his companion came to what was the remains of an ancient Nephite tunnel which ran in a southwest direction, and came out in Water Canyon. 3. Going down this tunnel for a short distance, he was shown into 9 large rooms from which the ore had been mined. The pillars, standing in the middle of the rooms and supporting the roof, were filled with gold. 4. He was then taken out through the above-mentioned tunnel, coming out in Water Canyon. 1. Pierce, page 4. 2. Pierce, page 4. 3. Note. Map, Appendix 3. 4. Note. Coyle has often stated that when the capstone is reached and penetrated, that the value of stock will jump to $5 a share. This will continue for a period of 9 months, at which time the 9 rooms will be entered, and a single share of stock will be worth $1,000. During this 9-month period, first the side drift and then the winds will begin producing. By this time, complete harmony will exist between the church and the operators of the mine. Right bracket. This experience was so impressed upon the mind of Coyle that he felt as though he had spent a lifetime working the tunnels shown him. He was also shown the great breaks back to the west, where all formations, instead of tipping to the east, would reverse and tip to the west. These were near the end of the tunnel which was to be dug, and 2 natural parallel walls led directly from them over to a smooth slick wall that dipped down to the capstone. If these formations were encountered, it would be a sure sign that the workmen would find the ore. Many other things were pointed out which would be signs of progress to him. 1. The messenger talked with Coyle as one man talks to another. He was dressed in temple robes and seemed exceedingly anxious that all the details should be stamped firmly in Coyle's mind. A promise of success was given according to his faithfulness. 2. A number of visits were necessary before Coyle finally relented and began work on the tunnel. An incident which convinced him that he should do as instructed occurred when the messenger appeared for the 3rd time. He pointed out the necessity of beginning immediately on the mine, and pointing to an artesian well which Coyle's neighbor was drilling said, "Tomorrow at 12 noon, they will strike a good flow of water, and at 4 o'clock, they will take the drill and rigging away. If this comes true, so also shall all that I have shown you about the mine come true. Now, will this be witness and testimony enough for you to begin this work?" 3. Coyle answered, "Yes." According to Coyle's wife, who had been instructed by Coyle to pay special attention to the well, the above happened just as. 1. Note. Further signs shown Coyle by messenger, Appendix 2. 2. Pierce, page 6. 3. Coyle, interview, May 1957. Right bracket. The messenger said it would, so on September 3, 1894, accompanied by a close friend, Joseph Brockbank, he set out for the mountain, and found the designated spot. 1. There, said Coyle, dig in that spot, and if you do not find a cream-colored formation within 3 feet of the surface, then there is nothing to my dream. 2. The cream-colored rocky formation was encountered. This convinced them, and on September 17, 1894, after staking out the necessary claims, work was started. 3. On March 4, 1909, the KOYLE relief mine was incorporated. Stockholders were John H. KOYLE, with 13,000 shares, John H. KOYLE, trustee, with 49,000 shares, George Hales, with 1,000 shares, John F. Beck, with 1,000 shares, B. F. Woodward, with 1,000 shares, and J. P. Creer, with 1,000 shares. There were 42,000 shares of treasure stock, making a total of 114,000 shares. 4. 20 years went by and the SHAFT-5 was sunk some 1,400 feet. It was now a tremendous task to raise the muck to the surface through a series of 11 long windlasses. An even greater problem was caused by fast seeping water in the shaft. Accordingly, a tunnel was started which would cut below the shaft and drain the water from it. 6. 1. KOYLE and Brockbank later stated that the spot seemed to have a halo of light above it. For many years a small monument designated the spot where the light appeared. 2. Pierce, page 6. 3. Pierce, page 6. 4. Articles of Incorporation KOYLE Relief Mine, page 2. 5. Note. Map of Mine, Appendix 3. 6. Note. Revelation on Tunnel, Appendix IV. Right bracket work began on the tunnel on January 6, 1914. 1. On the following Saturday, January 10, 1914, KOYLE was awake in his bed, contemplating a remarkable dream he had just had when suddenly a powerful vibrating influence came over him, lasting several minutes. It recurred twice more, causing him to rise up in bed. As he did so, two men dressed in grey clothes, having white hair and beards, one taller than the other, came stepping up to his bedside. The shorter of the two did all the talking and declared that he and his companion were in charge of the mine, telling Brother KOYLE that he had started the tunnel in the right spot and all that he had seen in his dream should be fulfilled. After outlining the future for nearly 2 hours, they departed, promising that both men and money would be provided according to his needs. 2. In later years KOYLE made plain that these visitors were two of the 3 Nephites who chose to remain on the earth at the time of Christ's visit to this continent. 3. 6 months after the appearance of the 2 Nephites, the church brought pressure to bear, and the mine was closed. It did not reopen again until September 1920. 4. As work was resumed, it was found that the timber in the original shaft had deteriorated to the extent that mining in the shaft would be dangerous. Therefore, all efforts were put to the furthering of the tunnel, which was about 200 feet long. 1. Map. Appendix 3. 2. Grant, Statement, September 1931. 3. Book of Mormon, 3rd Nephi, chap. 23. 4. KOYLE had stated that he was told by the Nephites that this would happen. They also told him that the same power which closed the mine would also open it. This reportedly happened. The church allowed the mine to open on the basis that the running of it would not be through supernatural power. Right bracket just as KOYLE predicted, so it has been reported, water was struck at about 300 feet. 1. At 1,300 feet, the red iron formation was encountered, and 20 feet farther, the large white vein. At 2,000 feet, the odd-shaped vein, 2 inches on one side and 18 inches on the other, which was to form their side drift, was encountered. At 2,200 feet a stream of water burst forth which filled the ditch that KOYLE had ordered dug the full length of the tunnel. At 3,000 feet the strata reversed to the west, and the tunnel ran straight on between parallel walls that led to a slick, smooth wall which dipped downward and as expected will lead to the capstone, 100 feet below. At this point, one can kneel down and see daylight at the mouth of the tunnel. By this time, many people had become interested in the mine and stock sales increased. 2. This continued for a while, but as the years passed and no ore of value was produced, people began to doubt. However, in February 1929, a platinum strike-3 was reported, and the value of stock went to $5 per share. 4. KOYLE felt that this boom would be only temporary, and allowed only a few hundred shares to be sold. 5. A few months later, when it did pass, KOYLE gave those who bought stock as many shares again as they had purchased. In 1931, at an annual outing celebrating the 37th year since the founding of the mine, W.A. Jones, mine secretary. 1. Appendix 2. 2. My own grandfather became interested about this time, and since he had no money, he traded his horse and wagon for several hundred shares. In later years, when a member of his family had a large debt to pay, he sold furniture from his home rather than part with his stock. He is typical of many men in Spanish Fork who are not radical about the mine, but who have a strange lingering faith that it will someday produce. 3. See map, Appendix 3. 4. Spanish Fork Press, February 28, 1929, page 1. 5. IBID. March 17, 1929, page 1. Right bracket recalled prophecies of KOYLE which showed that the time was near when the mine would begin producing. Property was mortgaged to the limit, cars and trucks the size of boxcars were on the highways, the mining industry was paralyzed, and the 4-year drought appeared to be in its first stages. All these signs were pointed out by KOYLE as indicative of the time when the mine would come in. 1. In August 1932, the State Securities Commission called before it the leaders of the KOYLE Mining Company to discover how it could operate without selling stock and without levying assessments. 2. Martin M. Larson, attorney for the company, explained that in 1926, when the state had denied him the right to sell stock, KOYLE called his board of directors together and had them issue him 50,000 shares of special stock to be put in his own name. There was no law against selling personal stock. Mr. Jones, company secretary, stated that there were about 275,000 shares outstanding, held by about 1,300 stockholders. No stockholders' meeting had been held since 1923, the last one having ended in some manner of unpleasantness. 3. The mine was to be studied by a geologist, and the company's books were to be presented to the commission. 1. Spanish Fork Press, September 30, 1931, page 1. 2. The Deseret News, August 20, 1932, page 8. 3. Meetings were usually held each Thursday evening. Purpose of the meetings was to discuss progress in the mine and encourage the faith of the stockholders in the future of the mine. In this manner stockholders became acquainted with prophecies of the past church leaders which justify the mine. See Prophecies of Church Leader, Appendix V. Right bracket on January 20, 1933, the Securities Board ordered an investigation of the KOYLE Mining Company. 1. This was done because of the refusal of the company's officers to surrender their accounts to the board, and also because of a report made by Frederick J. Pack, who had investigated the mine for the state. 2. Pack reported that the mine offered no encouragement whatsoever for the future. He condemned the enterprise on the basis of its geological and commercial features. He stated that seldom, if ever, had he seen a mining prospect so lacking in mineralization. On January 24, 1933, KOYLE answered Pack's charges by showing proof of the productivity of the mine. 3. The Securities Commission ordered a suit filed against the company for selling stock without permission. When the trial was held in the latter part of 1933, it was readily dismissed because key witnesses for the state changed their testimonies. Instead of accusing him, they defended KOYLE and asked his forgiveness. 4. Over the years, ore of many kinds had been taken from the mine. Values had been found, but none in sufficient quantity to merit the refining and processing of the ores which contained them. KOYLE maintained that theirs was a special ore that when heated by the current methods of processing, the precious metals contained therein disappeared in a black smoke. There was simply no plant that could handle it. So in July 1932, during the depths of the Depression, he built and 1. The Deseret News, January 20, 1933, page 1b. 2. See Statement of Carter Grant to Apostle Talmage concerning visit of Pack to the mine. Appendix Vi. 3. See article, Truth About the Dream Mine, Appendix X. 4. Samuel W. Taylor, Time and the Dream Mine Esquire LXI, November 1943, page 106. Right bracket equipped a concrete flotation mill at a cost of over $60,000. 1. The mill was paid for in full at the time of its building. 2. In this same year KOYLE felt that he should make preparations for the large grain bins, which were to hold the millions of bushels of grain to be purchased with gold derived from the mine. Large tracts of land were surveyed, leveled, graded, and terraced, but although the plans were drawn up, the bins were never built. In 1937, John Harper and his supporters, Gus Engelhardt and Jake Brackage, came to Utah and were directed to the mine by Carl Buhner of Salt Lake City. They brought with them a new type processing plant which was the invention of Harper. The plant contained a new type solution which had the power of dissolving the metals contained in the ore. The metals previously reported to have disappeared in smoke could now be preserved. The plant was installed in the flotation mill, which seemed to have been built to the exact specifications necessary to house it. 3. Some ore was processed, but the owners were soon influenced by prospects of greater returns elsewhere and left in 1938. 1. Samuel W. Taylor, Time and the Dream Mine Esquire LXI, November 1943, page 106. 2. When asked where he got the money necessary to run his mine and build his mill, KOYLE referred to the promise of the two Nephites in 1914, wherein they promised him all necessary funds and men for his project. 3. Pierce, interview, April 23, 1957. Right bracket in 1943, KOYLE was certain that the time had finally come for the mine to produce. 1. He was now 79 years old and had been working the mine for about 49 years. He had been shown in 1938 the exact spot where number 5 tunnel would begin producing. What he had thought to be the sure signs had appeared during the 30s, and he was convinced that it would not be long. 2. He continued, however, to hold meetings and work the mine until he became too ill to do so. He died May 17, 1949. The mine was closed after KOYLE's death and was not opened again until the summer of 1955. At this time, there appeared a man from Texas, Al Sinclair, who was thought by some, because of his knowledge of the mine, to be the third Nephite. 3. Under his direction, work was resumed at the mine and continued for a year and a half. Around Christmas time, 1956, it was again closed. During this period of a year and a half, 3 tunnels were dug at a point about 180 feet down in the winds. 4. Digging had to be done at this point since the 1. It seems KOYLE was never certain when the mine would produce. John F. Warner relates, "My father went to the mine to work early in 1895. One week he had to stay home because mother was ill. Uncle John came by and remarked back, "We may strike it this week, and you won't be there." Many years later he told me that he never would strike the gold as long as the church fought him on it. Throughout the 30s, one of KOYLE's sons relates that the father was often exasperated because the mine did not come in as expected. 2. Spanish Fork Press, January 7, 1947, page 1. 3. KOYLE claimed that the third Nephite should appear and aid in the bringing in of the mine, but Sinclair was unsuccessful. He took a half-ton of ore back to Texas with him, from which he manufactured acidless auto batteries with the liquid obtained by processing the ore. In report of the stockholders' meeting held May 14, 1957, this venture was reported a success, and a second half-ton of ore was sent to Sinclair. 4. See map, Appendix 3. Right bracket remainder of the winds was and still is filled with water, and pumps could not sufficiently clear it. The purpose of these tunnels was to reach the rich vein of sacking ore supposedly located at the bottom of the winds, 275 feet below the main tunnel. 1. At present, the only work done on the mine is the annual assessment, which amounts to $8,800 per year. Throughout its history, many obstacles have stood in the way of the progress of the mine. Lack of funds, lack of workers, and lack of machinery were constant inhibitors of advancement. These, however, were internal problems and were usually overcome. Chief opposition was of an external nature, coming from the state, the church, and numerous individuals. Opposition to the mine. Individuals opposed to the mine usually have been those who never invested in the mine themselves, but have seen others put all they owned into the project, never to realize any benefits from it. 2. Many opposed the mine because of religious convictions, and also because the church leaders opposed it and had instructed them to do the same. A special individual case is that of Peter C. Carlson, who from 1920 to 1926 managed the mine during the absence of KOYLE. In 1931 he wrote a letter in which he denounced KOYLE, the mine, and 1. Pierce, interview, May 10, 1957. 2. It is a fact that many people invested all their savings and much of what they earned in the mine, with the faith that it would soon produce and supply them with such quantities of wealth, so they would be able to pay off whatever debts were incurred due to the mine investments. The mine did not produce. These people were unable to pay their debts and therefore lost much, if not all, of their possessions. Right bracket all manifestations connected with it as being false, but if inspired, it was from the devil and not from God. 1. By 1926, the state had taken a decided stand against the mine. The company was deprived of the right to sell stock, and during the 30s was indicted in court for fraud and misrepresentation. 2. The main opposition, however, came from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which KOYLE was a member. During the early years of the mine, KOYLE received the blessings of some church authorities, both local and general. His stake president, from whom he sought counsel, said the mine was of God. When KOYLE approached Apostle George T. Teasdale, the apostle told him, "God bless you, go ahead." Council of 70 J. Golden Kimball was a stockholder and a lifelong friend of KOYLE. 3. In 1908, KOYLE was set apart as bishop of the Leland Ward, Nebo Stake. 4. By 1913, the authorities of the church had heard many disturbing reports concerning the mine and the visions connected with it. Letters were written from the general. 1. Letter written to whom it may concern, certified and signed by Peter C. Carlson, 1931, filed in the church archives in Salt Lake City. 2. Deseret News, August 20, 1932, pb 1. 3. KOYLE claimed that when the two Nephites appeared in 1914, they instructed him to furnish Apostle Kimball with 500 shares of stock, even if he could not pay for it. Sometime later, when Kimball asked to buy exactly that amount of stock, it is reported that KOYLE handed him the certificate which he already had made out. 4. Minutes of the weekly meeting of the General Authorities of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Journal History 1908, May 31, page 8. Right bracket authorities to Jonathan S. Page, president of the Nebo stake of the church, asking for full information concerning the mine which was located in that stake. On August 2, 1913, the presidency of the church published the following statement: 1. A warning voice. To officers and members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. From the days of Hiram Page, Doc. and Cov. Sec. 28, at different periods there have been manifestations from delusive spirits to members of the church. Sometimes these have come to men and women who, because of transgression, become easy prey to the arch-deceiver. At other times these people, who pride themselves on their strict observance of the rules and ordinances and ceremonies of the church, are led astray by false spirits, who exercise an influence so imitative of that which proceeds from a divine source, that even these persons, who think they are the very elect, find it difficult to discern the essential difference. Apparently Satan has transformed himself to be an angel of light. All spiritual manifestations which are contrary to decisions of church authority are not from God, no matter how plausible they may appear. All direction and guidance for the direction of the church will come through its head. Members should understand this. All may receive inspiration for their own welfare and that of their families, but anything in discord with revelation received by the head of the church is unreliable. No person has the right to induce his fellow members of the church to engage in speculation or take stock in ventures of any kind or the species. 1. Deseret News, Church Section, August 2, 1913, page 1. Right bracket claims of divine revelation or visions or dreams, especially when it is in opposition to the voice of recognized authority, local or general. We feel it our duty to warn the Latter-day Saints against mining schemes which have no warrant for success, beyond the professed spiritual manifestations of their projectors, and the influence gained over the excited minds of their victims. We caution the Saints against investing money or property in claims of stock which bring no profit to anyone, but those who issue and trade in them. Financial schemes to make money for the alleged purpose of redeeming Zion or providing means for the salvation of the dead or other seemingly worthwhile objects should not deceive anyone acquainted with the order of the church, and will result only in waste of time and labor, which might be devoted now to doing something tangible and worthy, and of record on earth and in the heavens. The counsels of the Lord through the channel he has appointed will be followed with safety. Therefore, O ye Latter-day Saints, profit by these words of warning. Per / Joseph F. Smith. Per / Anthony H. Lund. Per / Charles W. Penrose. On August 7, an answer to the letters written to President Page of the Nebo stake and his counselors on April 22 and July 19, in regard to Bishop KOYLE and his connection with the Dream Mine, was discussed in a meeting of the general authorities of the church. President Joseph F. Smith suggested that President Francis M. Lyman be responsible to see that the Nebo stake presidency do their duty by releasing Bishop KOYLE as bishop of the Leland Ward because of his connection with the Dream Mine. 1. 1. Minutes of weekly meeting, Journal History, August 7, 1913. Right bracket on August 16, the article of August 2 by the First Presidency was reproduced in the Deseret News under the heading of Dream Minds. Close quote 1. It was accompanied by the following article. Owing to the importance of the subject treated in the letter of the First Presidency to the officers and members of the Church which appeared in the Deseret News of August 2 of this year, it is reproduced at the head of this column. We trust the saints generally will profit by the advice given, and in order to bring it to the attention of all members, it might well be to cause the letter to be read in ward meetings or stake conferences or other similar gatherings of the people. The First Presidency warns the saints against investing in worthless stock, even if promoters allege that they are guided by dreams and revelations. It is a timely warning. Almost everyone has heard stories of how such and such found a rich mine by following directions given in a dream, and many fondly hope for similar luck, but in most instances, it will be found on investigation that such stories have little or no foundation in fact. They belong to a class where rumours which like the wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound hereof, but canst not tell whence it cometh or whither it goeth. No one should be guided by such rumours but by reason enlightened by the Holy Spirit. It is a safe rule not to accept the counsel of anyone who is in any way antagonistic to those who have been duly appointed to lead and guide Israel. And it will be found that the promoters of dream minds and vision enterprises generally are of that class. They find fault and pass judgment without justification. But by that very fact they warn the saints to steer clear of them, just as the ringing or whistling of buoys during foggy weather call attention of mariners to the presence of danger by the noise they make. 1. Deseret News, Church Section, August 16, 1913, page 1. Right bracket on August 24, during the Nebo Stake Conference, KOYLE was released as Bishop of the Leland Ward by Apostle Lyman, and Lars Peter Larsen was ordained in his stead. 1. The following is a statement by Carter Grant made to Apostle James E. Talmage on September 9, 1931. Brother Grant stated that from his investigations, he found that Brother John H. KOYLE and the directors and the secretary of the company, in June 1914, were called before Stake President Jonathan S. Page of the High Council of Nebo Stake, and that his action was taken by the direction of President Joseph F. Smith, then president of the church. Brother KOYLE told Brother Grant that at the High Council meeting referred to, the president of the stake, Brother Page, told Brother KOYLE that he had to close the mine down, or lose his fellowship in the church, in accordance with statements made by President Joseph F. Smith in his letters to President Jonathan S. Page. Brother KOYLE stated that he asked President Page for time, and that he be allowed to come to Salt Lake City, Utah, with President Page, and relate his entire story to President Joseph F. Smith. Then Brother KOYLE asked Press Page for a statement of the charges against him, so that he would know against what he had to defend himself. Brother KOYLE stated that the letter from President Joseph F. Smith was then read, in which the statement was made that Brother KOYLE had stated that he was going to redeem all the dead, and that he was going back to build up Jackson County, Missouri. The third charge or specification against Brother KOYLE was not stated by Brother Grant, as he could not remember it, but the fourth he remembered well, and that was to this effect: that Brother KOYLE intended to increase the capital stock of the company, and sell out and make himself. 1. Minutes of Weekly Meeting, Journal History, August 24, 1915, page 6. It is said that the members voted 100% to retain KOYLE as bishop. Right bracket independently rich. These charges Brother KOYLE denied, and asked for the privilege of seeing President Joseph F. Smith himself. He was told that his request would be granted, thereupon the High Council was dismissed. President Page later came to see President Smith according to Brother Grant. And President Smith stated that he did not wish to or care to meet Brother KOYLE or talk with him about the dream mine in any phase whatsoever, but that he must close the mine, and not sell any more stock, or do any more work on the hill, or he would be disfellowshipped. 1. In July 1928, at the Nebo Stake Conference, Apostle James E. Talmage denounced all stock-selling schemes in which the stock is sold, with the idea that the enterprise is being directed by supernatural means, naming in particular the KOYLE mine or dream mine as it is generally called. He urged members of the church to have nothing to do with such enterprises. He stated that he had gone through the KOYLE mine some 12 years earlier by appointment of the First Presidency, and at that time pronounced the property worthless. He was asked at the time if he was speaking as an apostle or a geologist. He declined to answer at first, but upon being pressed, emphatically declared that he spoke as an apostle and in the name of God. He then said, "I say to you that the misrepresentations which have been made in selling the stock of the KOYLE mine are of the evil one. I come to you as a representative of the presidency and the quorum of the 12 to warn you against it. I warned the owners in the name of the Lord and as his apostle that it is barren and always will be. The church will not close this mine or any other mine or enterprise that is legal because the church will not interfere." 1 Grant, Statement, September 9, 1931, page 3. Right bracket with private interests, but the church will take a decided stand against anybody who tries to induce others to buy stock on the representation that angels of God have revealed these things, and that the proceeds are to be used for the building up of the church. Don't raise your hand to sustain the prophets of the Lord and authorities of the church, unless you are willing to follow their counsel and advice. If ever there was a day when the church was led by the gift of revelation, it is this day. The authorities are not asking you to do anything that they are not doing themselves. They are leading and asking the membership to follow. 1. The church said very little about the mine for the next 17 years. In 1944, there was an increase in activity at the mine. By now the number of stockholders had increased to some 6,000, with about 600,000 shares distributed among them. The statement of the First Presidency, as published August 2, 1913, in the Deseret News, was republished as a renewed warning to the members on December 29, 1945. It was signed by the President of the Church, George Albert Smith J. Reuben Clark, and David O. McKay. 2. In September 1946, an editorial appeared in the church section of the Deseret News, in answer to inquiries as to whether or not the church had changed its stand on the KOYLE mine, and if Brother Talmage had admitted he was mistaken in what he had said about the mine. 3. 1. Spanish Fork Press, July 19, 1928, page 1. 2. Deseret News, Church Section, December 29, 1945, page 1. 3. KOYLE reportedly made the statement that after Apostle James E. Talmage's death, Talmage appeared to him and admitted that he had been wrong about the mine, and asked KOYLE to forgive him. This KOYLE did. At the time Talmage openly opposed the mine, KOYLE is quoted as saying that the time would come when Talmage would admit that he was wrong and ask KOYLE's forgiveness. It is possibly the report of this incident that caused the above-mentioned inquiries. Right bracket again the members were warned against investing in enterprises such as the KOYLE mine. A statement by Brother Talmage in which he renewed his stand against the mine was published in the Deseret News, May 14, 1928. The findings of Dr. Frederick J. Pack, the geologist, were again presented, and members were admonished to follow the counsel of the authorities in this matter. 1. On January 7, 1947, KOYLE was called before the President and High Council of his stake, where a formal trial was held. All claims made in the past with respect to the mine were reviewed. As a result of this trial, KOYLE signed a statement repudiating all divine claims with respect to his mine. 2. He accepted fully and completely the stand of the First Presidency regarding the mine, and retracted all statements he had made, in which he said the First Presidency was mistaken concerning this mine. He pledged complete support of the leaders of the church in all things, and asked his followers to do the same. 3. This move by KOYLE completely shocked his thousands of followers. The general feeling, however, soon existed that KOYLE did not agree with what he had signed, and had only done so in order to retain his membership in the church. Members of the mine leadership were soon pressing him to resume the holding of meetings and the taking care of an active part in the leadership of the mine. 4. Supposedly against his better judgment, KOYLE accepted this counsel and was soon holding meetings contrary to the orders of the church. As a result of this, the First Presidency. 1. Deseret News, Church Section, September 7, 1946, page 1. 2. See signed statement by KOYLE, Appendix VI. 3. Deseret News, January 8, 1947, PA 1. 4. See note in miscellaneous bibliography. Right bracket felt that action should be taken, and Apostle Mark E. Peterson was sent to Spanish Fork to help conduct the excommunication proceedings. The charges against KOYLE were: 1. 1. Holding meetings wherein prayers were said, testimonies were borne, and the sacrament was passed. 2. Receiving revelation for the welfare of the church. 3. Continuing activity at the mine and holding meetings after stating that he would not do so. On April 1, 1948, the trial was held and KOYLE was excommunicated from the church. The following article appeared in the Deseret News on the day following the trial. John H. KOYLE of Spanish Fork, Utah, was excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints last night on a charge of insubordination to the rules and authority of the church. Action was taken by the Presidency and High Council of the Palmyra Stake in a meeting held at the stake offices in Spanish Fork. 2. At the time of the trial, KOYLE was a very sick man and had to be carried into the room where the trial was held. Throughout the trial, he had little to say and there was much feeling for him among those present. As judgment was passed, however, KOYLE rose to his feet and in a loud, angry voice, called down the judgments of heaven upon those trying him. After this outburst, it is reported that all feeling of sympathy towards him disappeared. 3. 1. IBID. 2. The Deseret News, Friday, April 16, 1948, pb 1. 3. Note miscellaneous. Right bracket. After his excommunication, KOYLE became sick both in body and spirit. He had lost the thing most precious to him, his membership in the church. In May 1949, he was taken to the Payson Hospital with a heart attack and died there on May 17, 1949. Since KOYLE's death, active opposition to the mine has ceased. Nevertheless, the condemning words of the prophets and apostles during the past 50 years still stand and will continue to do so in the future. 1. Summary. From 1894 until his death in 1949, John H. KOYLE fought a continual mental battle with himself. He was a devout Latter-day Saint. All of his 13 children were brought up as firm believers in Latter-day Saint doctrine. His testimony meant more than anything else to him. Nevertheless, he could not deny the many things which he had seen and experienced. As his sister one time stated, John didn't know what to do. He wanted to obey the authorities, yet he could not deny what had been revealed to him. We all felt sorry for him. 2. This same conflict has been and still is experienced by most Dream Mine followers. Facts show that with but few exceptions, these people were members in good standing with the church. Opposition of the church to the mine, and, in fact, many hold. 1. In opposition to this, KOYLE is quoted as saying that there will come a time when the church and the mine leaders will be in perfect harmony. At this time, the mine will begin to produce. 2. Fillmore, interview, May 5, 1957. Right bracket. Responsible positions in the church and take the attitude that the church comes first in their lives. The prevailing feeling among stockholders seems to be that if KOYLE was really directed from God, then everything will work out as it should. If his work was not from God, then he will be punished, but not severely, since he believed in complete faith and sincerity that his was a work ordained of God. 1. Marion Boyer of Springville, Utah, longtime friend of KOYLE and a steadfast member of the church, had this to say in regard to the relationship of the church and the mine. If the mine is God-inspired, then the stand taken by the church is a wise one. Since the church had to take some view, whether positive or negative, on so controversial an issue, it was to the advantage of the mine when it took a negative stand. Had the church sanctioned the mine, then stock would have been bought by many thousands of fortune-seeking members, who, desirous of immediate returns, would never have had the patience and faith which the now more than 60 years would have required of them. Under such conditions, the mine could never fulfill its destiny. If the mine is not of God, then the stand of the church was a necessary and correct one. The dream mine has been no rich man's folly. KOYLE started digging a poor man and he died a poor man. He went through many years of persecution and ridicule for a dream that for him never came true. His wife, when asked whether the whole thing had not been an ordeal for her, had the following to say. I have wished many times, and so have the children, that John had never had a dream about the mountain and the ore. For years now, we have had. 1. Note miscellaneous. Right bracket. People coming to our house at all hours, eager to learn all about the latest details. Some believe while others ridicule. 1. It's been no fun, I can tell you. The children have been laughed at in school. The state is trying to close the mine. The authorities of the church are preaching against it. They have released John twice from church offices he held, and altogether we have had about all we can stand. Still we don't hold any feelings against anyone, for it does look ridiculous and unbelievable all right. I guess I wouldn't believe it either if I didn't see so many things coming true that John predicts. 2. The mine is known throughout most of the western states and is a topic worthy of argument wherever it is discussed. The lives of many thousands have been and continue to be affected by it. Very little material has ever been published about the mine. Several articles are now being written for publication, but they are being held back until the success of the mine is evident. A number of poems have been composed about the mine, but have never been published. 3. 1. A well-known story which illustrates this point is told of a man who was prone to drink to excess. One day during the Prohibition era he was being shown the mine by Brother KOYLE. All points of interest were shown him, and as they came out of the tunnel, KOYLE asked, "Well, brother, what do you think of it?" Looking down from the mouth of the tunnel, one has a complete view of the valley below. Pointing to the vast fields of ripening grain in the valley, the man answered, "See those fields of grain down there? See that fine stream of water you have here? I think that with that grain down there and this water up here, your mine would be a wonderful place for a whiskey still." KOYLE said, "Brother, you don't have the spirit." The man answered, "I would if I had a still up here." 2. Pierce, page 15. 3. See poems in Appendix X. Right bracket what the future of the mine will be, no one can say. If, however, one accepts KOYLE as a prophet, then the future of the mine is a certainty. One day, a day in the not-too-distant future according to some, 1, the KOYLE relief mine will become the richest mine in the world. This will be a day of famine and starvation, halted transportation, and great confusion throughout the land. The United States government will be forced off the gold standard, and the mine will help meet its demands. 2. Enormous grain bins will be built at the mine, and filled with an abundance of grain for the preservation of the saints. A bank will be built at the mine which supposedly will be the only one existing in the United States. At the foot of the mountain near the mine, a beautiful white city will be built. It will be a model city in which the United Order will be practiced. Only the pure in heart will be permitted to live in this city, and from it will the saints be sent to Jackson County, Missouri, to build up Zion, the New Jerusalem. 3. In regard to the above, we can refer to the statement of a man closely connected to the mine: if it is of God, then it will produce and all will be fulfilled. If not, then it will eventually die as did its founder. Either way we can do nothing but wait and see. 4. 1. Note miscellaneous. 2. Marion Boyer, personal interview, April 30, 19_7. Mr. Boyer relates that just before KOYLE died, they were riding together in a car. KOYLE made the statement that the time would come when the mine would help the U.S. government meet financial obligations. 3. Pierce, interview, May 10, 1957. 4. Note miscellaneous.